Every day means every day. And this was going to be a fun one because we're going to talk about my top 5 books that I've ever read. This is a question that I get all the time because I feel like reading and learning and improving yourself is almost becoming more and more cool these days. I feel like the personal development industry was so much smaller when I was a teenager, or even when I was in college, and now all of a sudden everybody is all about it, you know? So I'm excited to dive into this video. I'm going to keep it relatively short. I don't have any of the physical copies of the books with me, so I'm just going to be talking you through my top 5 and why I think you should read each and every one of them. Now, personally, I'm an audiobook guy. I love to listen to audiobooks while I work out, while I go on a walk, really anything. I just, it's so much more easy for me to consume. And shockingly, my retention is actually higher on audiobooks than it is on written books anyway. So that is the way that I choose to go about it. But without further ado, here are my top 5. And I would honestly credit these 5 books as having a big, big part to play in me being able to generate multiple 6 figures by, my 20s, but also they held a huge importance in terms of me actually having something to say on stage. I mean, I've been in front of really, really big crowds and spoken to, gosh, it's got to be hundreds and hundreds of audiences at this point. And you got to have something to talk about. You got to have some substance. And a lot of these books really contributed to my own intellectual, spiritual, personal development in a way that allowed me to genuinely be able to help more people. So without further ado, here's my top 5. Number 1, and this is in no particular order. The first one is called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And the reason I love this book is because it is like an entrepreneurial action movie. It's not super tactical, but one thing that I tell people all the time is that you always learn more from observing the I am than listening to the I think or the I strategize or the whatever. Meaning, sometimes when you have those books that really dive into the minutia of the how to in terms of business, you lose a little bit of the spirit of that. You lose a little bit of the context and the depth of it when you strip away the why, when you strip away the who, and you're just talking about the what and the how. Yes, that's important and you need to know those things. But to be honest, if you know what to do and you know how to do it, but you don't know why to do that and you don't become the person capable of doing it, then as soon as the market shifts, it's kind of irrelevant because your knowledge is now out of date. So, Shoe Dog for me was more about the why and the who than it was the what and the how. And I think that's why I resonated so much with it. It's just this honest to God action movie of ridiculous stories. It's genuinely entertaining. But if you read between the lines, there's so many deep, deep takeaways in terms of what it really takes to be an entrepreneur. And then he makes it plain in certain points as well, where he really just draws out and specifies the takeaways. But I think it's just such an incredible book about the resilience that is required to be an entrepreneur. And it places you in his shoes so that you can get an idea of what it's like before you actually get there. And I think that's incredibly valuable because the shortcuts don't come from, hacks or strategies. The shortcuts come from foresight and vision and perspective and being able to anticipate challenges before they arise. That's what really speeds things up in entrepreneurship. And I would argue in pretty much any other aspect of life. And I think this is a book that will allow you to do that. Okay. Number 2, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. This one is deep. It's relatively short. It's written by a psychologist who was actually a prisoner in a concentration camp. And it really shaped my thoughts around perspective, around psychology, around what's possible psychologically. Because I think in the personal development industry, especially, you read some of these books and you're like, yeah, my life is what I make it. My perspective is my reality. I've heard this before and it loses a little bit of the depth. But I think the way that Victor is able to articulate it and then the story that it's wrapped around, it just hits home so much harder for me. And it shows the power of perspective. It's not a hollow idea. I think we've gotten to a point now where so many things are being repeated that it's a lot of these really hollow ideas that lack depth and substance. This book is the exact opposite of that. It is so good. It is so deep. It is so meaningful. It's so impactful. And if you're looking for a way to increase your meaning and your fulfillment in life and doing that through gaining better perspective, I don't think there's a book that's better than Man's Search for Meaning. Number three, Essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson. The thing that's so cool about essays, and I will say this, essays is not an easy read. Essays is it's a compilation of all of Ralph Waldo Emerson's biggest essays that he ever wrote. And it's one of those books where you need to focus and pay attention. You probably need to go back and reread and take notes. It's so intellectually dense. It's the most challenging book that I think I have on this list. But the reason why it's that way is because it combines the perspectives and the knowledge of so many different disciplines. It's really an interdisciplinary book because it's drawing influence from scripture, it's drawing influence from psychology, it's drawing influence from science, it's drawing influence from philosophy, and not only that, but multiple schools of philosophy simultaneously. It's such a meta study in understanding the human condition. That's how I would classify that book. It is a little bit of everything, but every sentence could be its own book. And I really mean that. Like every sentence in that compilation of essays could have an entire book written on it if you really wanted to flesh it out to that layer of density. It's that impactful. So if you want to understand life a little bit better, if you want to understand a little bit more about what the heck we're all doing here and what it means, Essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson is one of the best. Number four on my list is Mastery by Robert Greene. And the reason I picked this one, especially for this video, is I know that a large part of my following is younger entrepreneurial males, right? So you're probably between, you're in your 20s or 30s and you're trying to make something happen for yourself. And Mastery, it's so cool because I read it after my journey. Like I kind of read it when I had already established myself a little bit more, but it was literally like reading a step by step recollection of my life and my entrepreneurial journey. I kid you not. Like everything he says about finding a mentor, everything he says about finding your own unique style, everything he says about learning, like the whole thing, taking risks, the whole thing from A to Z was exactly my story. And it worked for me, which is why I know that the blueprint and the formula that he lays out in that book is going to work for you too. So if you're interested in how do I find a mentor? How do I gain skills? How do I figure out what my calling is, what my purpose is? How do I figure out what I should be doing for a career? How do I allocate my time? How do I, think about taking risks, especially when I'm a little bit younger? All of that is covered in Mastery. And again, I can only co-sign it because it could have been written about me, like to the T. It was so crazy to go back and read that. So I could not recommend that enough, especially if you're looking for a little bit of a roadmap, because I think a lot of us we kind of flew blind during that process. And Robert Greene came along, and like I wish I had that book before I did my internship with Eric Thomas and started my companies and all that, because it would have eased the pain and stress because I would know a little bit more about what's on the road to come. So, Mastery by Robert Greene. The last one is a little bit of a cheat code, I will admit. It's not one book. It is a little bit of a cop out, but I'm just putting all the holy books, all of them. So that could be the Bible, that could be the Bhagavad Gita, it could be the Quran, it could be even Taoists or Buddhists writings, even Stoic writings, anything that would be considered a part of a great tradition of some sort of spiritual nature, whether it is theistic or not, some sort of spiritual tradition. The reason I say this is because as somebody who's read most of the books that I just mentioned in terms of Bible, Gita, Quran, etc., I think you get so much out of actually reading all of those books for yourself rather than simply subscribing to any particular ideology. Because quite frankly, the ideology that you grow up with is based a lot on your family, your geography, the church that you go to, if you choose to go to church at all. And this is not even an argument for spirituality in a strict sense. I would recommend it, at least in some form, but it's more so that the level of truth and fundamental wisdom that is found in those books, especially when you read multiple of them from different traditions, you start to understand that they're all kind of pointing to similar things. And there's historical differences and there's perspective differences. But at the end of the day, the bulk of it is really similar. And I think that there's something very profound about that. Like all these different people from all across the world, from all these different traditions, who many times in parts of human history haven't even really gotten along with one another, they're all kind of saying the same thing about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a successful person, what it means to be successful in terms of your finances, your faith, your fitness, relationships, everything in life. It's all in there because these aren't new age personal development ideas. It's not the same thing as, oh, yeah, you got to take a cold shower every day. And I'm a proponent of that, but I'm just saying that's very new age. These are fundamental truths that haven't changed since the dawn of human existence. And I don't think that they ever will change until, some asteroid wipes us all out for good. That's why you need to read them. Even if you don't believe in what they're saying, read them for the truths that they communicate outside of the mythological structure that you may or may not believe in, or the theistic structure that you may or may not believe in. That would be my recommendation to you. So to recap, Shoe Dog, Phil Knight, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, Essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson, Mastery by Robert Greene, and then all of the holy scriptural books I think are absolutely phenomenal. And also go to brandonleeburns.com. Brandon Lee Lee Burns.com. There should be a tab on there somewhere that says books. I'm dropping a couple of books in the next few months. So be sure to go there and get on the wait list for those so that you will be the first to know when the books are out because they're going to be incredibly special. I've been working really, really hard on these and I cannot wait for you to check them out. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to share it with somebody who would get value from it. Subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Until next time, don't forget that every day means every day.